Welcome to the journey of an aesthete, a comprehensive examination of all things aesthetic, the arts, the humanities, and what it means to be human. Hey, Kerry.
Yeah.
Finally.
We're doing good.
We're doing good. Kerry Lilly, I'm going to do a brief introduction just so folks know who you are or something about you.
Okay.
Welcome to Journey of an Aesthete. And on this podcast, like a lot of our guests, I have to say, you're someone who does a lot of different things. The people that come on my show are versatile, and they excel in a number of areas. So in that sense, you're true to the spirit of this show. And according to my information here, Kerry, you have worked as a coal miner. You are a minister in the Methodist Church. You went to seminary as an older adult, correct? And,
yes.
And you're a kettle drum player? And
steel drum.
Yes.
Steel drum.
Okay. And you ran a music festival for many, many years. So again, that's a lot of accomplishment in diverse aspects of life. And usually, I guess what we do on here is I do a kind of a linear chronology. So starting from earlier to later. And sometimes,
all right.
Sometimes when you do linear things that way, non-linear things will start to happen. They'll come up, in terms of what comes to your consciousness. So,
right.
Where did you want to begin? I guess in terms of your younger life and up till now.
I guess I could start with Mitch, how I started working in a coal mine at the age 19.
Wow.
And,
what year would that have been?
That was, I actually worked part-time in the beginning of 1973.
Wow.
And I went full-time in the fall of 73.
Wow. So you were, and where had you come from in terms of geography?
Well, I'm originally from the southern part of West Virginia.
Okay.
And I lived at that time in northern West Virginia and worked in coal mines predominantly my whole career in northern West Virginia and sometime in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Wow. You're the first person on our show who's done that kind of labor. And I'm really curious, if you don't mind spending a little time on those years. And just for people that may not know, of course, coal mining is a very newsworthy occupation. And there's a lot of history there. What was your very first time underground like that? Take us back to what that was, how you trained for something like that, or at the age of 19.
I started in a small coal mine, and like I said, as a part-time, I would work when someone would miss work, and they'd have an opening for me to fill. And so I basically had very veteran miners who guided me, and at that time, the older miners took it upon themselves, if you showed a desire to learn and to work, that they would kind of take you under their wing and train you. And I was very blessed to have some fabulous miners with many years' experience who taught me the ropes and showed me a safe way to do things, the right way to do things, and also taught me to work.
So when you say teach you to work, you mean more than the technical aspect of dealing with the earth, and you mean also, I suppose, a work ethic as well, right? Or maybe a kind of discipline, or
well, the truth of it is, in the coal mining industry, there are a lot of hard workers, and so a lot of people are second, third, fourth, and fifth generation miners. Mm-hmm. So the old adage goes, it's in your blood. My father worked 8 years on an underground coal mine, and of course I had friends and relatives, and I grew up on the edge of a coal mining town called Glen Rogers, West Virginia, and I grew up in Ravencliff, West Virginia, and my first doctor's appointment was at the company doctor. My first haircut was a company barber. And so, I've been through the whole, that whole regimen.
So I guess as a teenager, I guess your eyes were set on doing something in that, right? I would guess. Is that something that you?
Actually, no. No, my mother was the first person in her family history to ever become a college graduate.
Oh, wow.
And it was my mother's desire that we would all go to college.
Yep.
And get a degree. My mother was a teacher, taught French, Spanish, and English, all three. And she spent her life living and loving her students and, sharing their lives and her life with them, and great inspiration. However, I went on to college, and like a lot of people, I kind of got lost in it. And so I decided, rather than waste time and money, that and in West Virginia, the better paying jobs were coal mining jobs. And
yes.
So after I dropped out of college, that led me to work in the coal mine. I worked in a glass factory in the day, and I worked in the coal mine in an afternoon shift when I got to work, a part-time miner.
So did working in the glass factory, did that prepare you for certain things about working as a miner, or were there similarities in what the jobs called for, or were there differences, or?
Were, I think, again, the work ethic, the reality of learning to show up in the glass industry. A lot of people just didn't show up, or showed up impaired, and that was a sad mark on that industry. There were a lot of good people, but I could learn. I actually saw some good role models of good hard workers, and I saw some that would not be good role models.
Do you mind taking the time to mention, of course, without mentioning names, an individual in each category? Somebody that you said, I want to be like that person. So somebody else, you're saying, that's something I don't want to follow. I'm just two examples that come to your consciousness there about that.
Right. Well, I grew up in a small community, and a lot of miners were my neighbors. And my father was disabled, so some of those neighbors who were miners kind of took me under their wing, took me hunting, fishing, they were community fathers to me in a lot of ways. And so guys like one gentleman in particular, Sonny Schumann, his role model for me was a good family man, a hard worker, cared about his community, cared about, other people, and always had time for everyone, no matter what your age was or no matter anything. He always had time for you.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's important to have that.
Yes.
Well, so what can you tell me about your very first time in the earth like that?
Well, my first time going underground as a brand new miner, I went underground. It was, we had the type of mines that you walk back into the hill, so those are called drifts. And versus some mines are shafts that go straight down like an elevator, but these were drifts. And I was actually working outside, and the mine was only underground about 1,000 feet. And a guy called me on the mine phone, and he said to me, "We need you to come in here and help us. Just follow the belt in." And the belt line was what brought the coal out. And so I walked back in there, that 1,000 feet. Now, he could see my light, I could see his, but I was literally walking by myself.
Wow.
And for that 1,000 feet, it was a new world. And I helped do, they just needed more hands, and I helped do what they needed me to do. And then they sent me back outside to do what I was doing out there. And so that was my true first experience. When I went to work full time, I went to work in a mine that actually started in the early 1900s.
Right.
And this mine was huge underground. It was the size of say a 40,000 population city above ground. It was that size underground in terms of space. And this mine was full of rich history from back in the early 1900s, and a lot of that part of the mine was still standing. And I had the privilege of working with a couple of gentlemen there who really took seriously training new miners, young miners. And the term we had back then was, and still is a term today, called red hat.
Okay.
And Homer Hickam has written a book called Red Hat, and it's a real good.
I've heard of that book, but I have not read it. That's on my to-read list, believe it or not. You can believe that.
It's a great story. Of course, Homer Hickam grew up as a coal miner.
Yeah.
Of course, he was with NASA and did the book Rocket Boys and all. And so he actually worked in a coal mine as well. But the Red Hat miner was basically subservient to any black hat miner, which a black hat means experienced.
Okay.
And so the miners have a good sense of humor, so sometimes there would be some good-natured jokes, and sometimes the guys could, especially if you showed a certain vulnerability, it could be kind of cruel to you a little bit. But what they were trying to do was make you a good miner. Ultimately, that's what they were doing.
So you're 19. It's say 1972. As time goes by, when did you start feeling like you were a part of it, or like this was something that you really had under your hat, or under, you really started to see things in a different way, so that you could say, I know what's going on inside this earth in a way that somebody without that experience would be ignorant, wouldn't know anything about it, but you were starting to learn and know, get a handle on things down there. When would that start to happen, you think?
By 1975, after about 3 years of working in underground mines, I was feeling A, like it was at home, and B, I realized with every day, the more you learn, the more you need it to learn. Mm-hmm. And so it's I always taught younger miners who worked under me, the day you think you've arrived is the day you're in trouble.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
So keep your mind open, your eyes open, your ears, and just because we've always done it this way, maybe tomorrow it's not going to work. And so and I had a teacher, and he was pretty much a mentor. His name was James Zirk, and it was spelled S-I-R-K, and he
James Zirk, yeah, I know that name. Yeah.
Well, it's a familiar name, and it's a German name, and right. He took great pride in being a great miner, and teaching young miners. And he used teachable moments. You know, he didn't maybe know that in his vocabulary, but he certainly knew how to use them and use them well. And between him and my brother, Charlie, who is 5 years older than me, and he'd been working in the mine since 1970, those two were my mentors and my co-workers. Of course, my brother and I were great friends as well, but I was shaped by some really great miners. And so I felt at home. The old adage, coal mining kind of gets you, and you get it, and it gets you. And I worked as many hours as I could, and all the overtime I could, and I wanted to see and learn and do everything. I didn't want to lay back. I wanted to know the gamut.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that at that time you were developing knowledge that a lot of people walking above ground don't know, like maybe geological things or things about energy, or what kind of things were you learning from this experience that was important to you?
Well, one thing that I did learn, when I was in high school, I thought, who's ever going to need algebra? Who's going to need this math? Well, I tell you, you need a lot of it in coal mining.
You use algebra.
You need math. You need geography. You need geology. All of those things play a part. And of course, we are working in an underground mine. You are battling daily nature, underground nature. And the old adage is we humans never win.
Yeah, it's true.
We just get, we figure out how to get through today. And Mother Nature always has
the last word, right? Mother Nature has the last word, I think. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, and so when you think you can defy nature, then, you've got to come up with ways, because ultimately we're underground taking the coal out from under the rock. And then we have to support that rock so that it doesn't fall, so we can keep going back in the mine. Mm-hmm. And an old friend of mine used to say, he'd say, you coal miners are always defying gravity. So if you think of it like that, he was very true.
In what sense? So you're saying you're as a kind of a battle. So what were some of the adversarial things you had to deal with? Or they again, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not what were some of the typical challenges you might say that you had to, just to name a couple that you can mention?
Well, the roof in the coal mine, that there in the coal, you've got your coal seam, whatever the thickness of it is. Mm-hmm. It could be 3 feet to 5 feet to 10 feet, depending on what seam it is. And so between the coal you take out, then you have the roof above and the floor below. And dealing with the roof is something you have to do immediately. Roof bolting started during my career. It really was a new technique, fairly new in the early 70s. And then we started using a type of glue. We would drill holes, put a bolt in the roof with this glue, and basically that glue would fill in the cracks and would hold the roof up. And that was, that was for many older miners, they had struggled with that because it defied logic. But previously, wood had been used, timbers and beams, all wood or cribs and things like that to hold the roof. So, it was a dramatically changing industry in the early 70s. And some mines in the 60s had gone to those, but it was in the smaller mines, it was just coming on in the 70s. And so, dealing with the roof and in the floor conditions of the mine, which a lot of the mining takes place at water table level. So you're always dealing with water. Sometimes the water comes in through the floor, or through the roof, or through the coal. And maybe sometimes an area 4 feet high is filled with 2 feet of water, and you're walking in there, if you can imagine walking bent over, because it's over 4 foot high, and you're bent over, your face is about 6 inches out of the water.
Huh.
And your boots are full of water, and your clothes are wet, and
so it's almost like
you just start.
It's almost like having to work in kind of a flood conditions, or sounds like.
Right. It can be, and now some mines are drier, some mines are wetter. I've been in both, and but those are the forces of nature.
Yeah.
That you deal with, and as you learn good mining, you have a plan to deal with water. You have a plan to deal with a roof. You have a plan to deal with if your floor becomes bad, and you can't get equipment in and out because of the floor being so bad. And so you have to come up with plans. And sometimes the best plans, don't work out. You got to come up with a plan B, C, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Is that? I guess that's decided in the moment, right? The plan B or plan C.
Yeah. Right. In the larger mines, you might have somebody else making that decision above ground and giving you orders for what you to do things underground.
Huh.
But ultimately, it's the people underground who carry it out. And what maybe someone said, do it this way, winds up not working. And you have to be innovative, creative enough to figure out a better way to work. And my mentor, James Zark, always said, he believed in and it was an old West Virginia term, a pumpkin head. He said, and I'm always the pumpkin head, meaning that I might not be, I might not be the smartest guy, but the two of us together, we can make it work. Huh. And, that was how he trained me, is I'll always be listening for other people's suggestions, their advice. And it doesn't mean you always take it, but, don't ever turn a deaf ear to someone who's trying to help out.
Yeah, don't turn a deaf ear to someone who's trying to help out. That's it. I'm going to ask a kind of a naive question. What parts of the United States were you powering, or what the area you were working?
Our coal predominantly went on either to the Pittsburgh area or on the Ohio River.
Okay.
We fueled Harrison Power Plant, Fort Martin, Samus in Ohio. Our coal was steam coal predominantly, so not much of our coal ever went for making steel like in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. But we fed power plants like Duquesne Light, who made power and then made steel. So and our coal even. Some of our coal even went to some college campuses that were still burning coal back in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Had a couple of, a lot of universities burned coal for affordable energy and used it for steam and so on for heating.
Everybody needs an anchor in life. You, me, just everybody. Anchor made this whole show possible. I'm immensely grateful to them. You too can use Anchor to make your own shows and create your own vision. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. What was happening in your life outside of the mine? Now, I know that your mom was still involved in teaching, I guess, high school, right?
Yes, she taught until the late 70s. I was born when she was 40 years old, so she retired at like 65.
Okay.
But my father was disabled at age 50, and he was 45 when I was born. And so we were trying to. We had been a farming family. My dad left the mines to run a farm, and we had 3,500 chickens. We sold eggs.
Oh, wow.
All over southern West Virginia, and we had a big garden, and we had I tell everybody it was a precursor to Walmart. It was the Lilly General Store in Ravencliff, West Virginia. We sold everything from meat and canned goods and clothes to boats and motors and hardware and whatever. If you need it, my dad could get it.
Huh. So I guess you have a farm experience as well as mine experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, I did not know this. So you
growing up with having chickens as 3,500 at a time.
Huh.
So we eat chicken everywhere you could eat it, and ate eggs everywhere you could eat them, and we all worked. When I was 3-4 years old, I was gathering eggs.
Huh. So that's above ground, obviously.
Yes.
And so then you're going underground. So in a way, you're really learning about the planet Earth, and if you think about it, and things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're learning about how things work and put together. It sounds like.
Yes. And again, you're dealing with nature, and learning how to, how to take care of your chickens, and learning how to deal with people, and going on deliveries with my father, and doing all the things that you would do run the business, and I later on, I was in elementary school, I did a 4-H project where I had my own chickens for a while, and did that, which was a great training, and I was always a great supporter of 4-H.
4-H is something when people mention 4-H, they think of the 50s or 60s sometimes a little bit.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And it's more in rural areas in West Virginia. It was there, and it probably still is now.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the things I'm wondering is you've done so many things, and yet in the midst of all this, how did you end up, if you want to speak more about mining, you certainly are welcome to, because I'm sure there's more to the story there, but how did you end up going back to seminary and becoming you're in the Methodist church, correct?
Correct.
So what's the journey from one to the other? Or was it sort of more overlap, or you can talk about what happened there?
There's overlap, of course, for me and everything. And I was raised in a Christian home. My dad was a Sunday school superintendent. My mother taught Sunday school youth to youth. Growing up in rural West Virginia, the church was a social spot as well. We had gospel sings, and we had dinners outside, and this, that, and the other. And it was kind of like it's kind of the only thing happening in our community. So, that was just part of our life, and grew up in a small rural church. And of course, once I became a teenager, I kind of stepped away from that. But there was always something tugging at me about my roots, my faith journey might have taken a lot of wrong turns, but there was definitely a journey going on. My father 3 weeks before his death, urged me to consider becoming a full believing Christian, that he would like to spend eternity with me in heaven. That he knew he was going to soon. And 3 weeks later, he died. And some of those last words that he and I spoke to each other, kept echoing in my mind. And then we had a couple of bad things happen at the coal mine. We'll come back there. That caused me to start looking for answers that I didn't have. That was beyond me, beyond my hard work ability, beyond my. And we had a couple of accidents that really caused me to do a lot of sun searching. And
do you mind mentioning what those events were, or what the period of time were? this would have
Well,
been?
those were two of the very saddest days in my married career. But there's been several of those, I will have to say. But a person lost his life in mine that I was part of, and about a year later, another person lost his life, and both were tragic. Both were great guys, and it puts you on more of a downward spiral when you think about the finality of death and all the hardships. And it was tough on us all because we were a smaller operation, and everybody was taking it hard, and we were all looking for answers, and stopping being a man for me was not one of them. I needed to find some peace, and that put me on a journey, which became, led me to faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that took the form of you going back to school, some kind of school, right?
Right. Because I did not finish college when I dropped out. So when I started attending church, and I felt this tugging in my heart to do something more, that God was leading me somewhere else, and so truth of it is in our United Methodist Church, we education's valued, and so I went back to college at night.
Excellent.
And took night courses, worked in the coal mines in the day.
Oh, wow. So you're mining in the day and you're taking in the night, I guess you're reading, I guess at night you're reading Augustine or Kant. I don't know what you were learning, but whatever they were.
Well, yeah, I did religious studies classes, but I also had to do core classes.
Okay.
And I got my Bachelor of Arts from West Virginia University. I had also taken an associate in arts from Liberty University in Bible. And so I had that, which was a 2-year, and then I got my 4-year degree from West Virginia. And I have to say that God led me to Asbury Theological Seminary in Wilmore, Kentucky. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody that attended there, but it came on my radar. And I went there, and I started serving churches when I was going to seminary. And actually, finishing college, I started serving what we call student pastorate. And so I started serving these churches while I was learning. And at Asbury, it opened the world up to me. I met people from all over the world, fellow speakers, speaking like chapels, teachers who taught all over the world, folks who had sat under teachers like Stanley Jones. I got to listen to Ravi Zacharias, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, who's a great biblical scholar. I just had all this immersion and all this learning, and I was able to go back to my little churches in West Virginia. Even though I went to school in Kentucky, but I went back on the weekends with my family and I was able to take what I was learning back, and put right to use, basically in my real lab.
What are some of the favorite things you encountered in terms of texts? Because I imagine you had to learn some canonical things when you were at school. What? I have to say, of course, all the teachings of Jesus are certainly in my heart. I did a lot of work in the Old Testament, and it was hard, the prophets and so on, but there's so much to gain. Of course, the Psalms and the Proverbs have always been special to me. I guess the book of Romans, book of Colossians would be my two favorite New Testament books. Okay.
And the book of Acts. That would be my favorite.
Yeah. And so you started, I guess, you were student pastor at first, right?
Right. And that's a category in Methodist Church, and churches take that as a mission for them to help someone who's going into ministry so you can, make a quasi living, not huge salary or anything, but it gives you an opportunity to serve and learn at the same time. And the West Virginia Annual Conference, Methodist Church was very gracious to me. I served fabulous little churches in the Huntington area of West Virginia, West Hampton, West Virginia, Newburgh, West Virginia, all, smaller congregations, and but people with big hearts and lots of love.
Yeah. So your first, I think your denomination is distinctive because of the doors, correct?
Well, I'm not sure
I'm talking about
that.
The red flame on the door. Am I correct about this?
Well, actually, probably no. I guess our denomination, of course, when John Wesley and his brother Charles, it was a church of common people, and
right.
The circuit riders went through places like West Virginia, and where I attended, they would preach, here today and next week 20 miles away, and so on. And most of them had short lifespan. I think the average age of those circuit riders in those days was in the 30s. And they paid a high price for riding out in the cold. Didn't have a lot to eat, and they may show up tomorrow for a church service, and maybe there'll be people there, and maybe there wouldn't. And so a lot of people, the blood, sweat, and tears of a lot of faith-feeling people. Carried us through, and of course, made what it is today, for better or for worse. But our history really being common people and being able to all, the Young Methodist Church was late in doing that, but still early in my Christianity. I involved with women in ministry, and my pastor that I came to faith under was a female minister named Betty McBee, and she taught me what I say is the love of Jesus. I heard people talk about Jesus, but she showed me that love, and that's the gospel was given to me. Through a woman pastor. And, there's some people in this day that can't handle that. And I thank God for Betty McBee. She was a faithful servant.
So I guess you would say Betty McBee was someone who helped you, inspired you, I guess, in your first sermon that you delivered, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you remember what the subject of that sermon was, or so when did you, had your I guess a church that you were going to deliver a sermon like this?
My first, we would go to a nursing home and have a brief message and sing, and that was my first actual sermon. And my first scripture used was from Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. And and then my second sermon was from Proverbs: trust in the Lord with all your heart, and He will direct your paths. And those were two of my earliest scripture usings. And I've certainly, because I served these churches that have multiple churches, I preached, actually somewhere over 3,000 sermons in my career.
You said 3,000?
Yes.
Huh. What was the size of the congregation? Well, so many questions come to mind. I mean, one thing is that you've been such an extraordinarily busy man. How are you able to do all of this and at the same time go into the music, and how did you come to yeah?
Well, of course, I've always loved music, and as a child, probably to my parents' chagrin, I got a drum set.
Okay.
And a drummer in a house that's it's not always a friendly thing.
People love drummers. That's right. People love drummers in the family. Yeah. Yeah.
So I started out as a drummer, and I've always leaned that way. And of course, I got really into live music and used to attend lots of bluegrass festivals, folk festivals, rock festivals, all that, back in the day. And then when I became a Christian, I got really into contemporary Christian music and followed a lot of great contemporary singers and bands and so on. And then later in life, I was actually in my late 40s. I went to church, and I was attending a church in Morgantown, West Virginia called Wesley. And Wesley in Methodist had some music that day, and someone was playing a steel drum. It was a lead steel drum. I had never seen one in person.
Oh, wow.
I had heard the sound, but I had never seen one in person. And so this person was playing along, and it was Karen, and she was playing along, and I kept going like, where's the mic? How can you hear this instrument? There's not even a microphone around her. And it looked like she wasn't even playing, because her hands are down in the pan. And
wow.
So after the service, I went up and talked to her, and I took a mallet and tapped a couple of times on it. And it just sparked my interest. So fast forward a few years, there was a sign up at my church that there was going to be steel drum lessons, once a week, $15 a week or whatever. And the teacher's name was Chandler Bailey. And I signed up and walked into my first lesson with about 10 other, first time ever steel drum wannabe players. And I started playing steel drum at age 50.
Wow.
And it was definitely a crawl before I could walk. And I was privileged to be in a 10-piece band, and we did like tailgates, churches. We did farmers market type things. We did art centers, and our band name was Joyous Noise, and they're still playing in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they play, I live down in St. Augustine, Florida, but they still play. And Chandler Bailey, our teacher and leader, was taught by the father of the steel drum, Ellie Manette.
Wow.
And Ellie came to Morgantown, West Virginia from Trinidad.
Wow.
And taught steel drum at West Virginia University. And it spread, the steel drum spread around the world. And in many ways, Morgantown, West Virginia is a steel drum mecca. Ellie Manette has passed away almost 2 years ago now. And there's not a steel drummer in the world that doesn't point to Ellie as an influence. And I was privileged to play in front of him, and he actually tuned the drums that I had.
Oh, wow. So I guess it was while you were in this band, Joyous Noise?
Yes.
I guess it was while in this band that you got the idea to become, a music producer, or I guess you started to...
Well, I'll tell you, the story on that is a good while before that, Morgantown, West Virginia, being a college town, has a lot of local live music. And a lot of musicians from, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio, play, in a lot of the bars, the clubs, on campus, so on. And I've just always been drawn to live music, and I love being close to where it's being made. if I've got to sit in the back row of a 30,000 seat arena, it just doesn't mean that much to me.
Doesn't do it for you. You got to be, be close to where the action is, and you can see people. You can see people blowing into the horn or playing the plucking the string.
Yeah, you see their soul. You see their soul. You know, I mean, you see who's really up there when you're up close to the musician, and you see their love, their passion, and their joy. Yeah. And so I would go places, and this couple was playing in a club one night, and it was really noisy, and I actually knew this couple, and I just looked at them, and I was sitting as close to them as I could, and I could hardly hear them. And I just mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." You know, it was just so loud. And I could just see their countenance was falling because, you know, I know musicians have to, you know, put on a face and all that stuff, but it still matters. And so the next morning, which happened to be a Sunday morning, I went to my church. I'm sitting in this room that's never been used in probably 50 years at Wesley United Methodist Church. And I'm thinking how bad I felt for those two musicians. And the two girls walked by, and they were whispering, and I could hear them as plain as day in this room. And I looked around, and it was all the ceiling, and it's off of the balcony of the church. And like I say, it was just basically a passageway, but it would hold 200 people. And it just went on my heart right there. Hey, this is a place where people can make music and be respected, and music can be the focus, and the musician can feel, you know, the appreciation of the audience, and so forth. And I went to my pastor. I was not pastoring that church. I was just attending. And Pastor Michael said, I took him my idea, and he said, go with it. And a month later, we had our first concert. And we named it Concert in the Loft. And that was about 8 years ago now, and it still goes on today. And like I say, I've moved away from there. But, the gentleman, Duncan Wormer, is in charge of that now, and still there at Wesley Church, in the same place. And the church wonderfully bought a great sound system for it, and musicians don't have to drag their sound in and out. And it's the first Sunday night of the month, or second Sunday night rather, and it's one of those places where whoever played it always wanted to come back because the crowd was so into their music, and there was no talking, there was no circus going on in the background. It was all about the music and the musician, and they're both gifts from God.
Well, that's an ideal situation for both performer and listener.
Yeah,
to be sure.
Absolutely.
You said it's all about the music and not, as you said, no circus going on, or no foolishness, I guess. What comes to your mind, having done all these things in music and mining, and what comes to your mind that connects all of these facets of your life? If you had to think about that or talk about that.
I really think that common thread of people, with mining, when you work beside another miner, a coal mine, whether you're running a piece of equipment, or shoveling a belt line, or installing roof bolts, or doing, whatever task. But when you're working beside another miner, and you go underground together with a group of miners, and you come out at the end of the shift, that camaraderie, that spirit of oneness, And a friend of mine from New York City, one time I was with her, and we ran into a guy that I had worked with in the mines, say 20 years earlier. And when I saw him and he saw me, we hugged, and we talked, and she happened to be a New Yorker, and she said, "You guys loved each other."
Mm-hmm.
And it's so apparent. I said, absolutely. You know, I mean, we trusted each other. We worked together. Sometimes, you know, my decision, you know, someone was counting on me making the right decision. I was counting on them, you know, it could be life or death. And so the truth of it is it's that bond of people, the same way in ministry. I mean, when I was pastoring, you know, that privilege to be with families who were going through difficult times, that privilege of going through families, you know, when their daughter or son is getting married, or being at the bedside of that, you know, 89-year-old person who's been a witness and just a glorious person to so many people, seeing them take their last breath and knowing that peace that they have. You know, that's that same thread, that love, that camaraderie, that we were one. And then in the same way in music, I mean, when I played in Joyous Noise, my heart, that band was my heart, and I felt like I was theirs. And that was one of my hardest things to give up when I retired to move, was to not have that band to be a part of. Just being, and it turned out our last concert that we had together was probably the best one that we had ever played. And I still look back on it and think that was one of the holiest moments I've ever had that night with my band. We only played one gospel song, Amazing Grace. But, you know, but we were playing in the Randolph County Arts Center in Elkins, West Virginia, and this was a former Catholic church and all those things. But it was such a holy time because we were all in one accord. And we gave it our best. It was the best gig in my time with them, and so all that common thread, and that love for one another, that, you know, that binds us together, and that causes us to, brings out the best in us.
That's right. Kerry, this has been a beautiful episode because we're talking about all the different dimensions of human life, as you say, coming together in one person's life, in your life. And I really, I hate to say goodbye, but
thank you for the time. I really do appreciate it.
All good things, even good things, have to come to an end. And I really enjoyed having you on our journey of an aesthete, because this episode is I would say is emblematic of the spirit of our show. And it was really great you sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been my privilege, and I'll be looking forward to getting to meet you in person someday. And
yes, that's going to happen. Thank you,
I wish you God's very best. Okay?
Thank you, Kerry Lilly. All right, come on.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.
I don't like goodbyes. So I'll see you soon, folks. Thank you.